American game, Japanese rules on Frontline.
Tonight at 9 here on Channel 2.
Aloha, I'm Kathy, and this is my son, Madhava. He's helping me in the kitchen today, and we're preparing a wonderful meal that would be perfect for a midday luncheon or a late afternoon dinner. We're featuring calzones, which is the dough that he's working on here. This dough can also make a good pizza dough. How's it going?
Pretty good.
Let's see. Can you knead it with your palms? It's getting pretty tough, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, now the test for this dough to see if it's done being kneaded is if you can stick your palm right into the center of the dough and leave it there for 10 seconds. 2, 3, 6, 7, 9. Okay, and does it come out sticky? No. Okay, well this is done. Now this dough that Madhava made is made with 1 cup of warm water and 1 tablespoon of baking yeast until they melt together. Then you add 2 cups of whole wheat flour, 1/4 cup of olive oil, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of coarsely ground black pepper. And that makes a really wet dough, so Madhava sprinkled about 1 cup of loose flour on this board and has been kneading ever since, right? To get this real nice stiff dough. Now the problem with this dough, go ahead and make it into a ball, is that it needs to rise for 30 to 45 minutes until it doubles in bulk. And we have some risen here. Now, can you believe that that ball of dough is going to rise up this much?
No.
Well, it will. So we'll go ahead and trade. You get this ball. See how it falls back down again? And you can knead that a tiny bit more, and we'll let this one rise over here, okay? And this plastic wrap helps to just kind of keep the moisture in. Okay, now when you have that just kind of kneaded down a little bit, go ahead and cut it into 8ths, okay? 8 even pieces. And while you're busy working on that, I'm gonna go over here and start in on some of the fillings. What we're making is calzones. And they're basically like a stuffed pizza. So I'm going to give you some recipes and ideas for 2 kinds of fillings, but of course you can use your imagination and just play around with fillings. The first filling I'm going to show you how to make is a dairyless one, which makes it free from cholesterol and saturated fat. Now I've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the skillet, into which I'm going to crush 2 cloves of garlic. Here, just like that. And then to this, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of asafoetida and 2 cups worth of finely diced celery. Ouch. Of course, if you can't get asafoetida, which is what I usually use in place of both onions or garlic, you can, instead of celery, you can just use 2 cups worth of very finely diced onions. And this just gets sauteed like this. And to the sauteing celery and garlic mixture, I'm going to add 2 cups of seeded chopped tomatoes, 4 cups of roughly chopped collard greens, 2 teaspoons of vegetable salt, 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary. As soon as your either onions or celery become a tiny bit translucent, just throw in your seeded tomatoes and also the collard greens. Now you don't want to be cooking these vegetables very much at all because they will cook further as a filling to the calzones. Oh, put those in the pan. Looks like I need a big pan, huh? But the leaves will shrink down quite a bit. And to this, I'm going to add the flavoring. Two teaspoons of vegetable salt. And I like using vegetable salt in place of just salt because it's primarily dried up vegetables and spices and herbs, and it really helps to cut down on salt consumption. As a matter of fact, there are some vegetable salts on the market that consist of only dried vegetables and herbs and spices and have no salt in them at all. And this is the rest of the herbs and spices in here. You'll find if you use herbs and spices that you hardly will even miss salt at all. So this needs to just kind of cook down a tiny bit. And like I mentioned, I don't want to cook the vegetables too much because they will bake inside of the calzone later. But I better go check on Madhava and see how he's doing. How's it going?
Fine.
Oh, good. You cut them and made them into the round balls already, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you're working faster than I am. Do you want to help me make the next filling?
Sure.
The next filling I'm going to show you is not dairyless. It does contain cheese, which we try to keep limited in our diet at home. But this is a special kind of cheese. Of course, you can use, I'm using a smoked mozzarella cheese because this is a calzone that's especially good with smoked cheese. But if you can't find a smoked mozzarella, you can always use the plain mozzarella. Okay? We're going to start off with 2 cups of very coarsely grated smoked mozzarella, like that, and 2 cups of seeded tomatoes. Now, to seed a tomato, you're going to want to cut the tomato in half across like this so you can get at the little seed chambers. And then just take your fingertips, I think they're the best kitchen utensil there are, and just push the seeds out of the tomato like this. And what I seed these tomatoes both in the smoked cheese filling and the dairyless filling for is it makes it so you don't get as much tomato juice that comes out into the filling and it doesn't get too gooey and runny inside of the calzone. Okay, while I'm cutting this, do you want to go ahead and chop in or add in the rest of the ingredients as I name them off?
Sure.
Okay, we need to add a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese and 10 fresh basil leaves that have been cut into very fine slivers. Also, we need a teaspoon of asafoetida, and of course we're using asafoetida today, and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Of course, if you don't want to use asafoetida, you can always use some garlic. And along with that, the last thing is 1 tablespoon of arrowroot. Good. And I'll add in the last of the tomatoes here. And you go ahead and mix that together, and that's 1 filling. Of course, this is very easy because it doesn't require any cooking at all. And I'll look in, on this filling here. Now, as soon as the vegetables that I put together before get wilted down like this and the collards turn a bright green, then it's time to just turn the heat off totally and add the very last few ingredients, which are a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, which adds a nice cheesy flavor, and about 2/3 of a cup of mashed tofu. And I'm using mashed tofu here instead of some sort of a curd cheese because it has the same sort of texture. And it will absorb all the nice flavors from the spices. And then I'm going to add 1/2 cup of very finely chopped olives. And this is another filling right here. So we've got 2 fillings. So let's go ahead. You take that filling over here, and I'll bring this one. And we'll go ahead and make the calzones. And what I'll do is get you started, okay?
Okay.
To make a calzone, all you have to do is take one of these balls, like the ones that you've already rolled out, and you're going to want to roll them out flat into big round circles like this, and get them about 1/16 of an inch thick. You know how thick that is? It's pretty thin, huh? Okay, like that. And then take a 1/2 cup measuring cup, and you can use either filling you want, and put 1/2 cup right here, okay? Just on 1/2, but leave about an inch around the edge. And then fold it over and pinch the edges together. And you can get real artsy about pinching the edges together or just squish them with a fork, okay?
Okay.
And while you do that, let's step over here and I'll put together a very, very quick sauce that you can use instead of a commercial spaghetti sauce. Sometimes what I try to do is just kind of dress up a sauce that I buy in the store just by sauteing 1 very finely chopped onion like this in about a tablespoon of olive oil. And then I add to that 6 cups of tomato puree and 1 bay leaf, 1 tablespoon basil, 1 tablespoon parsley flakes, 1 tablespoon oregano, 2 teaspoons thyme, 1/2 teaspoon of asafetida or a clove of garlic, 1/2 teaspoon of grain coffee, 1/4 teaspoon black pepper, and 1/8 teaspoon of cinnamon. Now all those ingredients just get poured into your tablespoon of oil and the onion that are sauteing. And because I'm using canned tomato puree, it usually does have some salt in it. So I usually don't add any to it at all. But you can use either a tablespoon of miso or soy sauce. I'll just leave this to simmer and show you how to make, of course, any salad would be good served along with the calzones. It almost makes a whole meal in itself to serve a calzone with a nice tossed green salad, just like it makes a whole meal to serve a green salad with a pizza, because a calzone is basically an inside-out pizza. But anyways, I've got about 8 cups of torn spinach leaves here. And I'm going to add a few other ingredients to this to make a really nice, refreshing salad that doesn't contain any oil in the dressing at all. To these 8 cups of tossed spinach leaves, which have already been rinsed and drained, I'm going to very thinly slice some of these. These are Jerusalem artichokes, and they're sometimes called sunchokes. As you can see, they almost look like a fresh ginger root. Now, sunchokes are a really delicious high-fiber food that are very, very low in calories. And they're really delicious either very lightly cooked or sautéed or served raw, like I'm going to do in the salad today. But because they have a tendency to brown very quickly, it's a good idea not to cut them until right before serving time. Now you can wash your spinach leaves and get your herbs for the salad ready far ahead of time. I'm using 2 tablespoons each of freshly chopped basil leaves, parsley leaves, and chives. And those herbs can just kind of be tossed lightly into the spinach leaves and put under plastic wrap in the refrigerator if you want. That way you can make part of your salad a little bit ahead of time. But right before serving time, you're going to want to cut your sunchokes. And by the way, if you want to, these make a really attractive plant and a very prolific one if you plant around your house. The sunchoke is related to the sunflower, and it grows about 4, 5, 6 feet tall and has really pretty sunflower-looking flowers on it. So if you want to plant one, sometimes, these don't have them, but sometimes in the grocery store, you'll find sunchokes that at each little tip like this have sprouted little roots. And you can just plant those in the ground by kind of cutting them off at a tip like this, and then putting that little bit of the sunchoke into some water to let it sprout more, and then put it in the dirt. Now, right before serving this salad, you're going to want to take your ½ pound of sunchokes and just slice it very thinly and quickly, like that. And then just toss the very thinly sliced sunchokes, just as they are, nice and raw and crisp, into the salad with 3 or 4 tablespoons each of rice vinegar, which is a nice mild vinegar, and also some balsamic vinegar, which is a dark vinegar that is also very nice and mild and rather sweet tasting. And these 2 vinegars taste so good that you don't really need to add anything else to the salad. Along with the flavor of the fresh herbs, it's perfect. Let me check on Madhava and see what he's up to. How are you doing?
Okay.
You sure are doing okay. Well, you've already filled up this pan too, huh? Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. Why don't you go put this pan in the oven? There's some cooking already, so grab the pot holders and you can bring some up here to show us, okay? Those calzones need to be cooked at about 450 degrees for about 20 minutes. And when they're done, you just pull them out of the oven. Oh, you know what we forgot to do to those? The ones he's putting in, we forgot to brush the tops with oil. Here, I'll do that, okay? And then we'll put them into the oven. Just brush the tops with a tiny bit of olive oil. And that just kind of makes a nice gloss on them. Here, you bring one tray and I'll bring the other. Okay? Now these are what your finished calzones look like. They puff up really nicely while they're baking and make a beautiful golden turnover that's nice and full. Now this served along with the fresh salad makes a wonderful meal. And let me show you a cholesterol-free but very delicious cheesecake that you can make as a dessert. You can make a Neapolitan cheesecake. And we're going to start out making this cheesecake with ½ a cup of whole wheat flour, ½ a cup of walnut meal, 2 tablespoons of honey, and 1 tablespoon of margarine. Now all those ingredients get mixed together. You can do that, okay? Because I'll work on the filling and you do the crust. Let's show them. No, the water's for you to dip your hands in afterwards. Okay? This is walnut meal, and it's real easy to make. Just stick some walnuts into a blender or a food processor, and it'll chop them up real fine like that. And then go ahead and add the 2 tablespoons of honey and tablespoon of margarine. And what that does is help hold the crust together. And this just makes a nice crumbly crust. You go ahead and mix it and then just press it into the pan, okay?
Okay.
But you know what? To keep it from sticking to your hands, like so you don't go like this and it all comes up on your hand, just dip your hands in the water first and then press, and then it won't stick, okay? Okay, and while you're doing that, I'm going to start in on the fillings. This is a simple and yet elaborate dessert to make. It's simple because all you do is blend different ingredients together, but because it is a Neapolitan dessert, we have 3 different layers to blend together. Now for the first layer, I'm going to make a chocolate flavored layer. And to do that, I'm using tofu. This is the base of our cheesecake. This is actually a tofu cheesecake, and that's how we get away with making a cholesterol-free cheesecake. I'm using about 2/3 of a pound of tofu in this first layer. This particular tofu cheesecake makes use of really quite a bit of tofu. And it's a very high protein kind of a dessert. It's nice and nutritious. So it's really nice because it's one of those desserts that you don't feel bad feeding to your family at all. But I would suggest if you're going to serve the tofu cheesecake for dessert that you use the dairyless filling in your calzone. Otherwise it might be too much protein in the meal. Now this is 2/3 cup of carob powder, and that's what I use in place of chocolate in my cooking because it gives a similar taste to chocolate but doesn't add any of the cholesterol or any saturated fat. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, and every now and then just kind of dip your hands in the water. It also doesn't contain any sort of caffeine at all. Now, because carob is naturally sweet, it's a very naturally sweet food because it has a lot of natural fruit sugar. It's sweeter than chocolate is, so to give a little bit of that kind of bitter taste that chocolate has, I usually add about a half or less or more, depending on what the food is, of a grain coffee to the carob to make it taste a little more chocolatey. And so here I'm adding a 1/4 cup of grain coffee and 2/3 of a cup of honey with a teaspoon each of vanilla and almond extract and 1 tablespoon of arrowroot. Now this all just gets blended together in the blender until it's a nice, smooth, chocolatey consistency, just like this. And let's see how Madhava's doing and see if we're ready to fill the cheesecake with this mixture. How is it going?
Okay.
Oh, good. He's gotten it flattened in here on the bottom of the pan and a little mushy because you wet your hands a lot, huh?
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and wash them?
Sure.
And I'll go ahead and finish this up. Now to assemble this, we're going to just pour in the first layer of the tofu cheesecake, which is the carob layer. And then this gets topped off with 2 other layers. This, of course, I have to spread this out evenly on the bottom of the pan. And then what I usually do is top this carob layer off with a 1/2 cup of carob chips. So you have kind of a carob chip layer in between this and the second layer, which is a vanilla-flavored one. And this vanilla-flavored layer is made with 12 ounces of tofu, 1 ripe banana, 1/2 cup of honey, 3 tablespoons of arrowroot or bipro, and 4 teaspoons of vanilla. Now, what you have to be very careful of doing when you pour each layer in is not to pour it so fast or hard that it spills into or digs into the layer below it. So the vanilla layer gets spread out in the pan evenly. And then this gets topped off with a 3rd layer, which is a strawberry layer. And the strawberry layer is made with 1/2 pound of mashed tofu, 1 cup of mashed fresh strawberries, a 1/4 cup of honey, 3 tablespoons of sugar and chemical-free strawberry preserves, 3 tablespoons of arrowroot, and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And this layer just goes in on top of your vanilla layer. And all of this gets baked in an oven that's set at 375 degrees for 1 1/4 hours or 1 1/2 hours. And then when it's done, it needs to be allowed to be cooled to room temperature and topped off with a strawberry topping made from 2 cups of fresh strawberries, 2 tablespoons of honey, and 1 tablespoon of arrowroot. This strawberry topping gets put onto the cooled cheesecake and must be refrigerated for 3 or 4 hours. We don't have that much time, but here is a finished Neapolitan cheesecake, and this makes your whole meal, the cheesecake, calzone, and a salad. I hope you try this, and I'd like to leave you with this food for thought. Mencius, an associate of Confucius, wrote the following words on how humans should behave. Benevolence is the distinguishing characteristic of man, to be embodied in man's conduct. And this means in every aspect of man's conduct, down to his everyday activities such as eating. About eating, Mencius further wrote, "If you see them in life, you can't bear to watch their death. If you hear their screams, you can't bear to eat their flesh. This is the nature of true benevolence."
To get your copy of Kathy's new 750-page cookbook, The Art of Dieting Without Dieting, send a check or money order for $21.95 plus $2 for postage and handling to Kathy's Kitchen, P.O. Box 1122, Glendale, California, 91209. If you prefer to use your MasterCard or Visa, call toll-free 1-800-331-6161.
Friday, meet 14-year-old Aller Jones. After 6 years of hard work, he has finally achieved perfection as a boy soprano. Next year, his singing career will be over. He's the treble. A special presentation Friday night at 9.